All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Armchair CMOs. It's your boy V Moss,
And
Jules.
I'm Jules. How's it going?
So we talked about this last week. February is crazy. Go from the absolute ridiculousness of the Super Bowl and follow it up with more ridiculousness at the NBA All-Star weekend. So we're going to talk about that today from a bunch of different angles, but obviously, there's a lot of chatter the day after for a lot of different reasons and things that happened over the weekend. But let's just get right into it. First up, the weekend started on Friday with the celebrity game and the Rising Star challenge, which the biggest new wrinkle, which we'll get into the changes for Sunday, but those affected what happened on Friday as the tournament style for the Rising Stars. The winner got to play on the Sunday tournament. Um, Celebrity game, like, did you watch anything on Friday, Jules? I didn't either. I think I maybe caught the last few maybe the last couple plays of the Rising Stars like final game. But it's a
Yeah,
tough day.
I think
Friday night was Valentine's Day.
Friday was Valentine's Day, and so Rising Stars, I don't think I would have watched anyway. But Celebrity Game, had they had any celebrities I was interested in watching, I would have. And also like purely out of coincidence, like I don't think I followed anyone who played, so I wasn't like getting updates or notifications or posts or whatever about it that like might have reminded me that it was happening. So yeah, didn't pay attention to anything happening Friday.
Okay, let's look at the roster.
The two people that I know are Drewski and Kai Cenat, which both of them we like actively try to avoid because they're annoying. I don't know who else.
I mean, it's got Terrell Owens.
Mm,
I mean, the coaches were Jerry Rice and Barry Bonds. Um, the MVP was Rome Flynn, who was an actor. I didn't know who that was. Lisa Gray from WNBA. Tucker Halper. I don't know who that is.
yeah,
Uh,
I don't know who these people are.
Noah Kahan. I've heard of him only because
No, no Con. He has that one song that's like super viral.
yeah.
Oh, Shabuzi.
Shabuzi was in it. Yeah.
So it says.
Matt
See,
Barnes.
I like
Yeah.
there's people I know of, and like I don't dislike Terrell Owens or Shabuzi or Noah Khan, but they're also not people that like I cared about watching.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so it just wasn't enough for me to care.
Right. I mean, considering that we're about to get into a discussion about if people want to actually watch the real NBA players play basketball, I don't know how much you're gonna get people to watch some celebs play basketball. But here we go. Let's okay, enough about Friday. Saturday. Saturday is a big deal, a big point of discussion. Starts with the skills challenge, which was infamous this year because Wemby and Chris Paul cheated, got disqualified, which is which is like so on brand for Chris Paul. Like, even though obviously they didn't win, they got disqualified, which is technically a negative thing. Like, I appreciated and enjoyed seeing like the bond or like seeing the personality from Wemby,
Yeah.
like and like the relationship that Chris Paul, like Chris Paul, like whatever you say about him, if you like him or don't like him, he is one of the great basketball minds that we have in our league. So the fact that, even shown in this them trying to cheat the system, I think it shows that he's learning from Chris Paul, whether it's some bad but mostly good. Like,
Well,
I
it was
appreciate that.
that's like Chris Paul's idea. Like I think he probably talked him into it. Like it wasn't like Wemby was like I don't know. Uh yeah, I don't know. I'm glad they got disqualified because it would have like sucked the fun out of it if they let that score stay and then everyone did that. But it because they got disqualified, it kind of made it more fun because there was like, at least a storyline.
Right.
But the skill challenge on Saturday, I feel like was one of the more interesting events.
I mean,
The other two events being 3-point contest and dunk contest. Like I feel like I was most entertained by skill contest or skills challenge.
skill contest usually is a good time, especially now that, over the last few years that big men have become more skilled in shooting and handling, like, and they have big men participating. It's not just a guard thing. I think that that has made it a little bit more interesting. So, it always is a good start, even though people are waiting for the next two events, which 3-point contests won by Tyler Hero. But I just think that Steph knew that he was going to be exhausted from being the guy who was at home. He's doing all these events. Like there was obviously you had to have Curry brand Under Armour event. Shout out to my boy Nana who works on the Curry brand team. Um, so we knew he was going to be out and about. Like so to have
Is
him do that in addition to having to play and be, expected to have a good show on Saturday. Like I understand why he didn't participate, even though like we would have loved to see him do that.
does were the Warriors like an actual like host? Were they considered like the host team, or is it just that it happened to be in San Francisco? Because
I
I feel
don't.
like the dancers and stuff a lot of time are wearing like Warrior stuff. Like it felt a little bit like they were kind of the host
Yeah.
team in some ways, but not in others.
I mean, I
But I
don't
feel like
feel like it's just like when we talked about hosting the NCAA tournament, like at Georgetown. Like I'm sure that they're probably the primary go-to leaders on all of the organization and management of the event. But like it's got to be all hands on deck from an NBA standpoint. But I think, like you said, there were definitely some elements to make sure that they were highlighted as being the host, like local team.
I feel like that could really add like an interesting layer if they like were more formally the host team and you had like the players who maybe weren't all stars doing events or like behind the scenes or interviews or I don't know, like I feel like that could be an interesting layer. This is the first year I really noticed it because Steph Curry like kind of took on more of a host role. Like that it never really occurred to me that that was like a thing, but I don't know. Like that could be interesting.
Yeah, but it's tough because a lot of the guys that don't make it go on vacation. Like that's a break for them to
True. That's
cover.
true.
Paul George got a lot of heat for that because he's not playing well and the Sixers aren't playing well. And he's like on the beach chilling. But yeah.
A
Okay.
long season, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So big deal Saturday, dunk contest. So we gotta
And
say, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I know you have a lot to say about the dunk contest.
So the dunk contest is always like I'll share a personal story of why the dunk contest and like part of the reason why I'm a big NBA fan. My grandmother who just passed away this past May, like was a huge basketball fan. And one of my early memories of being a kid watching basketball is like being like in fourth or fifth grade and watching Kobe in like his rookie year win the slam dunk contest and like being hooked after that. Like we always like watched because our church that we went to when I was a kid is across the street from their house. So like Sundays on NBC in the afternoons, like we'd be watching those games when it was Jordan and Ewing and those guys. Um, so that was when I realized how big of a deal Saturday, it's like All-Star Saturday Night was, and like it's have probably watched all of them since then, and like at least one of the events. So like the other connection that we have to it is Mac McClung is like our guy. Like I got let's put that. Don't make that
Your
face.
your guy, he's not my guy.
Say that. Why won't you claim my boy Mac? He's
Your guy. Just speak for yourself. That's all I'm asking.
okay. I apologize. But yes, Mac McClung started his career in college at Georgetown when we were both there. His freshman year was my first year back in the athletic department full time. But also, I claim Mac McClung because he's from Virginia, which is a big deal. I claim everyone that's from Virginia. He actually played his.
I'm sure there's some pretty shitty people from Virginia. Just careful, by the way. Like, that was a strong statement.
I claim. Listen, anyone who's doing anything positive or
Mhm.
like but yes, he played his high school championship game in his senior year at VCU's gym and broke Allen Iverson's scoring record. So like it's a big deal. Like I followed him a little bit and root for him and hope he does well. But the big thing to talk about here is obviously like they pull him from the G League 3 years in a row just to do the dunk contest. Like, and you feel sorry for him at the same time that you're happy for him because like he's not really in the league, but you bring him out just for this. But financially, like there's just something about the fact that he's made all this money from doing the dunk contest, but not like from salaries because he hasn't really played in the league, and like G League salaries are not much money at all.
I
Um,
think he's a two-way this year, so he does have the two-way salary, but still, your point remains.
he doesn't play, man. Like, and I feel bad for him, but at the same time, like he, in addition to the money he makes from winning the contest, he maximizes this visibility of this moment, and he's one of the signature athletes for Puma basketball. I think he debuted a new sneaker during the dunk contest. And how many other G Leaguers have a deal like that? Probably zero, right? AT&T was a sponsor of the dunk contest. They did a sit down interview with him. I think in Candace Parker that was making the rounds on social and on. I think it might have run during the broadcast as well. And then I saw him yesterday at the game, posted on his Instagram story, like with his Gatorade jacket on, like he's talking about he's a Gatorade partner. So he maxim like his shout out to his team. They've got it structured where whatever happens, he maximizes the moment. And I mean, if I'm him, I enjoy it, but at the same time, I'm feeling like I wish I could be in the league. But if not, if this is my thing, I feel like he's just from listening to some of his interviews, I feel like he's coming to peace with it. Like whatever opportunities I'm given, he's gonna make the most out of them. And he definitely did that on Saturday by winning the dunk contest.
I'm so torn on this. Because from on the one hand, it is like a little bit mutually beneficial. Like he's the only guy that was in the dunk contest who was doing anything. Like Stephon Castle, like kind of got it together, but other than that, he was like there were two other guys who like didn't even like make dunks or like I don't know, they just like were totally collapsing under the pressure. Um, and so he was the only one who like did anything worth paying attention to. So like that's obviously good for the NBA. Like he has fans, like there's these brands are seeing it as worth it to like sign him to deals. So he clearly has a following. Um, but also like I was texting a friend of mine who's like a big NBA fan like you and has been paying attention for a really long time, and he felt the exact opposite from you. He's like, it's just a distraction. Like it just like really places a huge highlight on how they can't get the stars to dunk, and like he's won it 3 years in a row, and it just like it distracts from the rest of All-Star weekend. Like it shows like he's the only one who can do anything interesting. He's not even in the NBA. Like also like there's something to be said for he's not in the NBA, so he can kind of just spend all year
Like,
practicing these
yeah,
like absurd things.
yeah,
So I don't know how I feel about it. Like there's so many different opinions on it. It does definitely like point to a problem.
yeah.
Um,
And
which like I don't know the answer, but I think that's like the theme for all of NBA All-Star. But
But it also speaks to the nature of our business right now in terms of the power of social media and the opportunities that get created because you have a following, right? Like
I mean,
he came to Georgetown. He came to
that's why he
Georgetown
got,
with 100
yeah,
whatever thousand followers, and like
yeah.
that was a big deal. Like, and so he's had that was in 2018. So like I'm sure he's continued to grow. I'm sure he's continued to, if he's smart, engage them in the right way, that continues to add value, not just from a brand partnership standpoint, but the following is definitely something that is got the NBA execs thinking that we got to keep this kid active, right? And I think, the point that you made about him having all year to practice, I think that's also part of the incentive, right? Like there's not enough money in it to make the stars take that risk, and he needs the money theoretically, right? So he's incentivized to practice, he's incentivized to be creative and be outside the box. Like he was the only one that had props, and the other one only one that had like it seemed like he gave it some outside the box thought to it, and he also made all of those dunks on the first try, right? Like, so not only did he spend the time, months being creative about what that looked like, but also he practiced them enough that he didn't miss them. Like that's you got to give him credit for that. But also, it just also
Yeah.
speaks to the problem, like the guys that you want to see in it don't have time to do that, or they don't want to do it.
I feel like there's something to like, of course, fans will have a problem with this, but they've a problem with everything. So who knows how it would go over. But like there might be something to having like more rising stars or like lesser known for their playing ability, but like more known for something else. Like Bronny, put Bronny in the dunk contest. Like he kind of fits that same bill of like he's not like a great NBA player, but he has a following. Like people would want to watch him. He has like I mean, his dad's a billionaire, so I don't know if he has the financial incentive, but he might be willing to do it. You know what I mean? Like maybe they sensationalize the dunk contest a little bit more, which that's what I'm saying is I feel like fans wouldn't like because there's a lot of like the kind of purists who like want LeBron still to be in the dunk contest or whatever, which like I just don't think is going to happen. But there could be something to like sensationalizing a little bit or using it as a platform to like show some lesser known guys and like I don't know. I'm not like saying that necessarily is the answer, but like if Mac is the only person who's made the dunk contest interesting the last 3 years, like maybe they just really lean into that kind of thing.
Right. Speaking of Bronny, let's go on a quick tangent real quick. This is not in our notes. I just want to get your opinion.
Okay.
So Bronny might not be able to participate because I don't know if you saw Bronny celebrated Valentine's Day on Friday with his significant other.
I saw it. It was all over Instagram.
But my question is that Sports Center worthy? Like posting on their Instagram?
I think you're asking the wrong question. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I think you're asking the wrong question. I think you're asking because if SportsCenter had asked themselves that question, they wouldn't have posted. So they're clearly not like worried about maintaining their like brand integrity when it comes to that. What their social strategy is not about like pushing the brand. Their social strategy is about like getting clicks and likes or whatever.
Right.
Um,
All right.
because he's a following. Like,
Right. Okay. I don't
yeah.
want to put too much time on that. I just want to get your thought from your perspective because I
Well, this just quickly. Sorry, I know, but this ties back to like kind of what we were talking about last week. Like, there's now all these different audiences that care about different things. Like the OG NBA fans, like you, don't want to hear about that. But there is now an audience that cares who Ronnie is dating and like whether he's still dating her. And there's like all of these brands,
right.
whether they're like the actual league themselves, the team, or like reporters or whatever, are just trying to like find a balance of like engaging all of these different audiences. And you can't make everybody happy.
The OG person to me is like the social media, understanding social media. I see it and I follow Bronny and I'm like, okay, good for Bronny. Happy for you, bro. But then the step of SportsCenter taking it and reposting the exact same stuff was like, that's what made me cringe. Like, this guy,
Yeah.
my God, just
I mean, the actual celebration was a little bit cringe. That's what made me cringe. Like rose petals on a bed. Like, are you serious? Like, that's what made me cringe. But
because
I think
I think we're saying the same thing. Like to me, that because it was it on his I don't think it was on his feed. I think it was on his story, which is either
yeah.
more of an all right, we're talking about this too much. I just wanted to
No, I like this conversation. Hold on, because last thought. This is my last thought. This is still pretty new, I think. This like tr this change in like what people are interested in and like these new audiences that are interested in that kind of stuff. And I think brands are still kind of trying to figure out like where they want to fit in. Like at some point, SportsCenter may land in they're just strictly about the sports and they're going to leave all the other stuff to other outlets. Like
right.
they may land there eventually. But I think that like there's so many brands and companies and players in the space that are like still trying to figure out where they fit in that they're like kind of all over the place right now. But hopefully someday we'll have like some rules more clearly defined so that if you want just the sports, you can want all, oh, there's my dog. Sorry. Um, if you want all the other stuff, you could. follow some accounts or outlets or whatever. And if you want just the sports, you can follow ESPN and whatever. But
Right.
anyway, that was my last thought.
All right, wrapping up the conversation about the dunk contest. Shout out to Jordan Rogers, who had a nice IG carousel post with some thoughts about why the stars don't dunk, which is basically what we talked about. Has to do with money, um, the risk of injury, one, but then the risk of embarrassment, especially in the social media age, that'll be amplified quickly. But after Mac won, John Morant, Giannis, Zach LaVine talking about they're gonna do it. So, maybe they will prove Jordan Rogers and us wrong. I don't think they will, but let's, fingers crossed. I mean, that would be huge to get if you get those three guys. I don't think you're getting Giannis, first of all. And I don't even think Giannis would be good at it because he's not like I've never seen him do a creative dunk. He's just a big guy who can dunk. He's powerful dunk. And that's the same thing about LeBron. Like a lot of talk yesterday, not a lot, but like some talk yesterday, giving LeBron a hard time for the fact, if you remember, you might not remember. I don't know how old you were in 2009, but in 2009, he like was at the All-Star game and said, "I'm preliminary putting my name for the dunk contest next year," and he never did it. But like I heard someone just like say it, like, yeah, it makes sense. Like LeBron's, you never seen LeBron like do a bunch of creative dunks. Like he just dunks it. He usually on fast breaks or like has a clear lane to the basket. He does the same three dunks. Like his package is very limited, but it's LeBron. He's big. It's like usually powerful because he can jump really high and he's strong. But it's not like you don't expect him to get creative with it. So I don't expect these guys to do it, and I think that that's okay. But if those guys don't do it and Mac doesn't come back next year, like the NBA is going to be in big trouble.
So, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. This is just going back to that split in the fans that I was talking about. Because I was talking to a friend who like he's a GA, like a college basketball GA. So like he cares about the playing, the performance. Like he's kind of more of like a purist. So he's like, I don't want to see the sensational dunks. Like I don't want to see someone dunk over a car. I want to see somebody make like just an athletic dunk look easy, which is like how it kind of started. Like I think that's like Vince Carter's whole thing.
True.
But
True.
um so like again, it's like depends what you as a fan want to see. And I feel like different fans want to see different things. So who knows?
Right. But I,
Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
it probably would like, would you rather see someone do outrageous dunks that make you go wow and make them on the first try, or someone try a bunch of just simple athletic dunks and miss them like 8 times? Right? Like,
Yeah, well, that was bad. No, I'm not denying that like the other players who were in it this year didn't do a good job. Like that was bad. But like it's like the Mac versus like Stefan Castle debate. Like
right.
once Stefan Castle kind of got it together, he was
It
like
was good.
doing really athletic things and they just like looked cool, but it wasn't the same sensationalized thing that Mac was doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Let's move on to Sunday. So, for those of you who weren't paying attention, like we talked about before, format for Sunday's game turned into similar to the Rising Star setup, having 4 games, a semifinal, and then a final. So, like I said, the Rising Star team that won on Friday got to be part of the tournament on Sunday. So the Rising Stars versus the Young Stars versus the Global Stars and versus the OG Superstars. Um, Important to note, last minute scratches from the one and only LeBron James and Anthony Edwards, who just Ant was in warmups and then it got announced that he wasn't going to play, which I thought was crazy. And once I realized that we hadn't seen LeBron at all until like people in the locker room and he's like dressed like he's about to go sit down somewhere. He's got no bags, no nothing. I was like, okay. Yeah. And then he got announced he wasn't playing. So talk about the format. That's the whole conversation that will be like talked about all week on all the shows. Draymond Green, who obviously also another Warrior, was at home. He was a part of the pregame show on TNT and ask when they were asking him about it, he like went on this crazy rant and like just typical Draymond. It was a little bit hyperbolic, a little bit like overzealous, but he wasn't wrong, right? He was just talking about this idea. He didn't like the fact that by adding the rising stars to play on Sunday, it takes away time, it takes away potential records from the guys who actually made it to the All-Star. And I agree with him. I mean, I feel like that's, those guys like Cade Cunningham, who was a first-time All-Star, and some of the other young guys who just made it for the first time, didn't get to play that much. Like when they could have at least been if it had been the normal format, they would at least been on the bench. Even if they didn't play that much, it would have been part of the game. But at the same time, some of the older legends also kind of poked back at Draymond and said, well, the NBA was forced to get creative because the people in your generation messed it up because they didn't play hard. So I don't know. Ultimately, I feel like I like seeing the young guys in it. I think there's a little bit part of the conversation, but like as someone who doesn't care that much about this, what do you think, Jules?
You're right. I mean, I have no like emotional ties to what this once was, which maybe gives me a less valuable perspective or just like a more valuable because it's different. Um, I liked the format. I liked the tournament format. I feel like that gave them something to play for. These guys are like deep competitors at heart. They're not gonna want to not make it at least through the first round. And you could see that in like the 3-point contest and dunk contest to some extent. Like, I don't, the guys don't want to lose. So having the tournament format, I think, worked well. From a marketing perspective, I actually loved having the Rising Stars. We've been talking for months about how the NBA has a problem like once Steph and LeBron retire. Um, like who are going to be the faces of the league? Like who's going to like be the guys. And like I mean, we know it's like Jason Tatum and Giannis, and I feel like they're trying to push Wemby on us. But I feel like giving the rising stars like airtime is good from that perspective. It kind of like lets them field younger guys who are good players and like maybe see who the fans cling on to and like a low pressure type of thing, like see who has the charisma needed to be potentially like a face. So I really liked the Rising Stars component. I also feel like the way they separated the teams, which I think we're gonna get to this too, but like having OGs versus Global Stars, like OGs was essentially the Olympic team versus Global Stars, Young Stars, and Rising Stars. Like I feel like that also added a level, like a layer of competitiveness because it gave the players, in addition to wanting to make it to the second round, like something to fight for being like, yeah, we're the OGs for a reason, or like you're not gonna stay on top long, OGs, like whatever. I feel like there's a layer of that kind of like competitive nature that comes in too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like so here I'll give my overall thoughts, right? I felt like having the Rising Stars in it wasn't I understand what Draymond's saying from the perspective of somebody who actually is an NBA and had to make an all-star team, and what that takes. But I felt like them being in it, and especially them playing the OGs first, like that was probably the most competitive game out of the three
I think,
games, right?
yeah, I think so
Um,
too.
so big picture, right? The tournament style format was fine, but it was so much else that went into the whole show that is going to be the reason why so many people are going to say negative things about it. First of all, the run of show was way too long. Like everything, the pregame show was too long. Let's come back to Kevin Hart. I'm gonna say Mr. Beast contest I thought was cool because the kid won, but that took up too much time and it was in the middle. It dragged it out.
Mhm.
I understand Mr. Beast is a big deal. He's a streamer. He's got tons of following. Again, like we're talking about inserting people who have followings to make it relevant. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. Important to note, this is the last All-Star game on TNT, so there was a lot of fanfare, a lot of talk about that. A whole presentation for those guys, like in the middle of the last game, I thought was wild. Like, was like just to stop the play. Like you're complaining about there not being enough energy when they're playing, but you could Like worse than that is to just stop the play completely. So love those guys. Have watched those guys since I was a little kid, like I just said. But to stop in the middle of the game and have that break up the game, I thought was rough. So bottom line, we saw a tweet that said there was literally in the 3 hour telecast only 42 minutes of basketball play. And that's not including the 2 hour pregame show, which I watched all of, which is like part of the reason why I was so fatigued by the end of it. Like
Um,
too much going on.
I want to add something, but my dogs are still barking, so we'll see. I think the problem more so than there were only 42 minutes of basketball was there were 80 minutes of ads. Like that was absurd. It was I saw some I sent it to you, so you might be able to pull it up. Like there were 80 minutes of ads. Which that's me like the other stuff happening, like the Kevin Hart commentary and the TNT presentation and the Mr. Beast contest. Like, yeah, I was like breaking it up, I was making it all take a long time, but like I kept like missing things because I'd like mute the TV during the ads or like go do something. But they ran for so long that I'd like forget what I was watching. Like it was like 5 minute commercial breaks where like I was like, oh God, like are they even playing again? Like
So I have it.
uh
I have it pulled up. It says intro with ads 30 minutes, pregame talk 10 minutes, game one 12 minutes, the Mr. Beast thing 5 minutes, game two 16 minutes, the music performance like the halftime music performance 6 minutes. Then
that felt longer.
the inside the NBA tribute that I just talked about, that was 9 minutes. Game three, the championship was a total of 14 minutes. Post game, like giving the trophy 6 minutes. Then the end of it was 22 minutes. So then ads mixed in was 80 minutes, like you said. This
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that that like took away from it for sure. It was a lot.
okay.
Uh, I
Briefly,
feel
let's
like
talk
this,
about Kevin Hart. Briefly, like you because you disagree with me on Kevin Hart. And
yeah.
I'm I'm not a big fan, but I'm a Kevin Hart fan. Like I like some Kevin Hart and he's from Philly, so I gotta support Kevin Hart. But I thought he just did not help what we just talked about in terms of it being choppy and being
Well,
drawn out.
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but I think it would have been so stale without him. Um, like I think that he was the only thing that added any like energy or humor. Which is kind of surprising because like Shaq and Chuck, like they can be so funny, but like that wasn't happening. You know, they were just being so boring and like uh was it Ernie? Like he started presenting something and it was just so dry. And then like Kevin Hart runs in and like it added some energy. So like imagine having to watch that many hours of that just to watch the three 12-minute games and having it be that much drier in between. Like
Yeah,
I feel like Kevin Hart added a lot from that perspective.
I
From making it take longer, maybe, but like, would they have shortened it if they didn't have him? I don't know. Like, it probably just would have been more boring without him.
right. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate the fact that because Kevin Hart is almost like he was almost in a hybrid role of what we would have TJ do at Georgetown games. And that's not what Ernie and Kenny and Charles and Shaq are for.
With
So
their
like
good
right, I
Yeah.
agree, like giving that on the court in the moment, talking to the players is not what those guys usually do from a standpoint of those type of things are supposed to be more entertaining than they are supposed to be, I guess, journalistic reporting. So I guess I mean, I agree with you, but I also just felt like my perspective is that it didn't help. It didn't hurt, but it also didn't like it didn't help.
I just think I would have turned it off. So if you weren't there, something else I was gonna say was, which will this will tie us back into, but uh no, so well, I don't know. This is like another layer of like why what do you care about? Like why are you watching that All-Star anything? Like what do you want to see and how are you watching it? Like I think there's some people who sit down and turn on the TV and watch the whole thing, but then there's some people who just want to see the highlights like truly just the highlights. Some people just want to engage with stuff on Instagram. Like this ties to everything we've been talking about this whole time. Things like having Kevin Hart there, having a performance, like a musical performance in the meantime, having the Mr. Beast competition, like that all made for more engaging content or highlights to be shared, not on the TV broadcast.
Hmm.
So like I think that they were trying to like hit multiple targets here, which maybe made the like TV broadcast product worse,
Right.
but it allowed them to like productize it in other areas.
And it also
um,
helps them to cover their butts just in case, like, because if you rely on the game, you're only going to share good moments from the game. Like, what if you don't get any? Because you don't, it's like you're hoping that the intensity is better, but what if it's not? And you got
yeah,
highlights, at least you have Mr. Beast kid making a shot at the end to win him, I mean, $100,000. Like you're right. I feel like they did if they did it intentionally and like they said, they gotta just pick your spots. Like, let's make sure that we have great content that this lives outside of this because it's going to be what it's going to be. But let's make sure that we do a good job of having it have life on social and digital outside of this whole thing because apparently I'm the only asshole that watched the whole thing, right? Like,
yeah. You,
maybe that's the
I mean,
reason.
I watched because I knew we were going to talk about it, but like normally I'd probably be like, I'll turn it on for a little bit or like have it on in the corner or like engage otherwise type of person. Like I wouldn't watch the 2 hours of the pregame show and the whole whatever. I also, the other thing I want to say about Kevin Hart is like, I think he was the right choice for this role. Like if they're going to have this type of person in there, I think he was a good choice. He like has a relationship with LeBron. He like does a lot of commercials that are like kind of sports related, it feels like, or like he has commercials with partners who are also partners with the NBA. Like it's absolutely hysterical seeing him like stand next to Shaq. Like, I feel like he's the right guy given the audience. Like, it would have been weird to have Mr. Beast do the whole thing. You know what I mean? So, like, from that perspective, I also think he was the right choice.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so
All right.
that's my argument for Kevin Hart.
Yeah. So obviously a huge way to determine if this is a success is the ratings, which we won't know yet. We said Friday automatic already. We talked about Friday having competition because it's Valentine's Day, so people are probably out and about. Also Saturday's competition, the USA Canada hockey game is part of the Four Nations tournament that they're doing. That was probably the biggest game of that series so far, and that was on Saturday night. So competition was Saturday night for the All-Star
And I
game.
saw that got really good ratings for hockey. So I don't know how much overlap there is there, but there's probably at least some.
And then there's no question that the ratings for Sunday will suffer because of a historic pop culture entertainment moment with the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary show that was on Sunday night, which was I felt bad because I ended up muting the tribute to Ernie and Shaq and Charles and Kenny because I was watching a clip of SNL on Twitter on my phone. But it was funny and it was like really good. Like, um, so yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very curious to see ratings. The other like part of this that I wanted to mention is like the NBA really relies on pop culture. Like and the NBA relies on the fact that like celebrities care about the NBA
Yep.
and go to NBA games. Like the Knicks literally have Celebrity Row, which they publish every game about like just which celebrities are there. So the fact that like literally every famous person in the world was at the SNL 50th show and not at the All-Star game, like I think had to hurt. Like they lost a lot of the organic uh like awareness that people might have had through all of these other celebrities being there because instead they're at SNL 50th.
Yep.
I almost wonder, like A, I wanted to make that point, but B, I almost wonder if they kind of like this weekend was a rough weekend for All Star. Like it was Valentine's Day, then
So
hockey, which we can like debate how much of a problem that was Saturday night, and then Sunday night was SNL 50th. Like I almost wonder if it was on purpose because they have an excuse if they get bad
they just did
ratings
the best that they could. I mean, but also like the week after the Super Bowl was like that was literally the biggest Super Bowl. We talked about that. Like it was the
of all time. Yeah.
biggest Super Bowl of all time. And like
I almost
I
wonder if
had to
it was,
recover from that.
yeah, like I almost wonder if this was on purpose, like just to kind of de-emphasize. I don't know. I don't know who like if they were trying to get high ratings, they did a terrible job of it. I guess we'll see, but like they made it really hard for themselves if that was the case. So
Okay.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Last thing about the format and the game on Sunday. Obviously, there's going to be a big talk about how to fix it. Um, in my mind, I talked about this with Justin Tinsley because he was obviously watching intently. He had to talk about it on Sportsman this morning. USA versus the world is a no-brainer. Giannis even suggested it. I think Giannis even added the idea of having it switch between a US uh like game and then like a European game or somewhere abroad as well, which I think is a cool wrinkle. But I just don't understand why they don't just do that. Like they did NBA, the NBA did USA versus the world for Rising Stars from 2015 to 2021. So they understand the value of it. Like the format for that this year would have gone so crazy after how crazy and intense the
Yeah.
Olympics were this past summer. I mean,
To be
obviously,
fair,
I know how much the game is growing internationally, but like, I don't understand why this is just it doesn't isn't making sense to do it.
I feel like they kind of try to tap into that though, with doing like the OGs, the international stars, the young stars. Like I think they tried to kind of tap into that same concept, but they didn't just make it just USA versus the world.
Yeah. I think you just
Uh,
got to do it like, I mean, obviously like we talked about it before about them talking about European expansion, right? Like that's another way to hype that up, USA versus the world. I just feel like it's a no-brainer.
yeah. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they'll do it
No, I don't know.
next year.
I'm
I
interested
don't
in
know.
what's holding them back from doing it, right? I feel like, because honestly, it'd be, I mean, you could do, maybe you don't need the Rising Stars game anymore. Maybe it's just USA versus the world, and you got the young Rising Star. I don't know. I'm just talking, but like USA versus the world for Sunday night with you're basically just imagine how crazy that would be because you're basically taking the Olympic team and having them go against the best players from all the countries that gave us, a hard, like not a hard time, but like competed with us pretty closely in the Olympic Games this past summer. Like the French
Do
guy,
you,
uh, Jokic's team from Serbia, like
do
I
you
don't know.
think there's any fear? Do you think there's any fear of the USA losing and that somehow hurting the NBA's brand? This is what's been on my mind the whole time, and I've like been hesitating to say it.
Oh,
But that's what I think it might be.
I don't think it does if they're talking about considering going to Europe anyway. Everyone knows that the best players in the league right now, people are gonna say are Luca, Joker, Giannis. I mean, and it is what it is. Like you like and I
With
think that that should be an incentive for the US guys to be proud and saying like, okay, cool. Like you're saying that these three are the best players in the league, like give them a chance, the next generation of USA guys to say, no, you guys are wrong. This is still our league.
To some extent, I think this is not what we were talking about, but to some extent, I think that this concept could help fix the whole problem with everyone that everyone's been saying like exists with the game and the NBA in general. Like
Right.
I think that you could get more intensity, like more of that like hunger that players used to have. Like if your point is like there's international players and there's like rich kids, like
Right.
and it's just not the same as it once was. Like
Right.
I feel like you could get some of that same scrappiness if you made it about like national pride. um, by having like a European league in general. Um, but also like yeah, tapping into that for All Star for sure. I don't know.
I feel like the money still got to be there too. Otherwise, like you'll have people like LeBron opt out at the last minute, right? Like,
Yeah, I know. Well, okay, so do we want to talk about LeBron quickly? A, do we know if he still got paid? B, what I was disappointed in was not him opting out in the last minute, but he wasn't even like there. Like I didn't see him watching. He wasn't on the bench. Like there's all the players kind of standing in the end zone who like participated in other parts and then weren't playing or whatever, but they were all still around and like supporting their teammates and stuff. I didn't see him at all, which I felt like wasn't a good look.
He was on the sideline for like at least the first game.
Okay.
I'm not sure at what point he left, but he
Yeah.
was there for the first game. I remember them showing him watching him from the sideline. I don't think Ant stayed around. Like I don't remember seeing Ant on the side,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I feel
mean,
like that's not there's something that All-Star, like, I think part of the reason why people like All-Star is it's this same reason why people are so excited about the US Olympic team is like the Avengers. Like everyone is so excited to see players who don't normally play together. So there's something similar to like even if they're not playing, it's kind of fun to see them supporting each other and like rooting for each other and whatever. So to have like a couple of your biggest stars not even there, I felt like wasn't a super great look. Or apparently they were there, but they left. I don't know. But um anyway,
okay. Last thing about the weekend, we'll talk a little bit from an advertising sponsorship standpoint. Some of the big, normal, big players for the NBA were on uh, the front lines on the biggest stages for the weekend. AT&T, like I said, sponsored the dunk contest. State Farm sponsored Saturday night as a whole. Castro was a sponsor of one of the events, maybe the three pointer, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it's like what?
Starry was the three-pointer.
Okay, what did Castro do? I don't remember why I have them written down, but Starry three pointers, I do remember that now.
Skill. What was the other one? Skills challenge and dunk contest. No, Kia was the dunk contest, I think, because
Right.
Mac had the Kia car.
But AT&T sponsored the dunk contest overall.
I don't
Big
know. I
picture,
don't remember Castro.
SBJ said that this was the most sponsors that they've had, which is like part of the reason why there were so many ads, right? Like they had 52 brands signed on to support All-Star experiences, which is crazy. Like,
Have you
uh,
ever?
go ahead.
Sorry. Have you ever seen Idiocracy?
No, what is that?
It's the movie.
Never heard of it, Drew.
You need to watch it, but basically the idea is like it's a couple hundred or 1,000 years or something, a couple hundred years into the future, let's say. And the whole point is like everyone's gotten so dumb and everything's become so commercialized and it's like basically kind of dystopian, but it's a comedy. Anyway, I'm actually shocked you haven't seen it. The amount of sponsors just in the arena that they had like flashing all across all the screens and like all across their jerseys and their jackets on the court and this and that. Like it literally felt like Idiocracy. So if anyone's seen that, you know what I'm talking about. You should go look it up just so you know what I'm talking about. But it felt dystopian. Is really the point.
But I guess like I sent you a funny cartoon video about like the sponsors, like that was spot on. But we wanted to talk about the ads too, because like we mentioned before, from an advertising standpoint, obviously the sponsor activations on site is one thing, but if you're going to spend money for ads on the broadcast, you got to be strategic for brands that are out. Like we're interested to know what the brand strategy is for those who want to participate in both Super Bowl and or All-Star with them being back to back. So we talked a lot on the last episode about the Nike women's spot, which we thought was amazing, and also liked that Nike took the strategy and the approach to put some extended versions of that commercial and run those during All-Star on Sunday night, which I thought was super smart. Um, the big one that played in Super Bowl was very generic for all of women's sports, but then the ones that they showed on Sunday were more specific to each of the athletes that they highlighted and let them talk a little bit about their own stories, which I just thought was really cool as another way to have that campaign give it some more life. And I think that makes sense, right? Like if they're going to debut it because it needs to make a splash during Super Bowl, that's one thing. But then to go more in depth and more in detail during NBA All-Star makes sense because obviously there's a synergy there. Three of the big stars in the campaign are WNBA stars, which are also very integrated into the All-Star weekend festivities as well. So more love to Nike for the women's ad in general. But any other ads that you saw Saturday or Sunday that you wanted to talk about?
The only one that stood out to me was like Formula One. I don't know if it's Formula One. I don't really know what it is. The F1 movie.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Brad
which
Pitt.
I don't know if that's like a Formula One, like, I don't know if like they made the movie or if it's just, I don't know. But I hadn't seen that trailer before and I saw that during this, which is only interesting because I would not have thought that was the best place to debut that at, but apparently they know something I don't about like the overlap between those audiences or something.
That is interesting. I mean, to me, that comes off as a, if I got to pick one, let's go with the cheaper one. I
Yeah,
mean,
right. As opposed to Super Bowl.
I haven't really heard much about that movie at all, right? Um, but there was a lot of integration from the bigger budget movies. So like there was a lot of Superman promo, a lot of uh Captain America came out this weekend too. So like that was really integrated in the weekend as a whole. So to me, that seems like F1 was just like we need to make a splash, but like not that big of a splash.
Not Super Bowl. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there was like any other ads that stood out to me. I want to make a quick comparison to, so I watched SNL 50th show today on Peacock, like to catch up, and a lot of the ads, especially towards the beginning of the show, featured a lot of like SNL cast members to a
Hmm.
point where you like almost thought they were like sketches until you realize they have like the sponsored or ad or whatever in the corner. Which I feel like there some of that they did obviously like with like Nike and whatever, but I feel like that was a kind of missed opportunity. Like I feel like more of the brands should have had NBA player partnerships ads, maybe just for this event. I feel like that's worth doing. Um, I don't know, maybe they didn't do it for this just because they do it for everything, like they do it all season long. Um, but that felt smart for SNL 50, so it felt lacking for All Star.
Like the only
Um,
example of that happened was the Superman. Like Superman had a like skit commercial thing that featured Shaq because Shaq is like Superman is one of his nicknames. So
mm,
like that was probably the closest example of what you're talking about. Um, but it still felt like, I mean, Shaq is old. Like, so it's not like I
yeah,
don't
right. It's not the best one. My phone's about to die. Should we wrap it up?
um, yeah, I think we're good. I think my phone's about to die too.
Great. Okay. We're being like cut short today by our phones. I have 5%, but the last thing I'll take 10 seconds to touch on where I didn't see a ton. I thought there was more in previous years that I saw like non-NBA run, but like around the city activations definitely meant to coincide with All-Star. The only ones I saw this year were the Jordan Jones show before the weekend, which I thought was strong. I thought that was cool. I feel like it's been the Jordan show the last couple weeks, so go for it, Jordan. Felt awesome. Ayesha Curry did something which obviously felt natural because she could like have Steph there, um, and like use that for her brand. And then the Adidas Ant event was apparently really well attended. At the Adidas show, my only criticism there was like the actual Adidas store that the event was at had Adidas athletes who weren't Anthony Edwards on their like signage on that side of the store. So it felt weird that it was like an Anthony Edwards event, but
Hmm.
didn't. Like there was no signage at the actual store about like on the at least on the outside of the store about him. Like there was video about it, and it just felt weird to have him the event be about him and have a whole crowd there to see him, and then like the signage wasn't featuring him. So
I'll have to go back and look at that. Like I will say another cool activation was Hennessy had like a whole women's basketball showcase. Asia hosted it.
I didn't see that. That's cool.
I think I think some of the bigger name I think one of her teammates, I can't think of which teammate it was. But yeah, it was some big names that were participating, some big names in WNBA that participated in that. So that was a big deal. But like I saw some of the guys that I know, like my man Corey Towns and my man Trayvon Edwards were out there and like talking specifically about how many events you go to and how many people you see. And, it's a great opportunity um, to connect. And I think it's also like a showcase of the people who are in the business of the sport, but also in the businesses around the sport and how it all comes together. So, like you said, the brands are being activated. Like the money was spent and the money was made. Whether or not the game, the product itself was good, was TBD. And Jules' phone died. That's wrapping up this episode. See you guys next week. Actually, we're taking a break. So we won't be back next week, but the week after that. But anyway, Jules says bye. Talk to you guys later.